Hey mama, if you're listening to this, you might be carrying a secret that feels too heavy to speak out loud. You look like you got it all together, you serve at church, maybe you even lead a Bible study. You smile when you drop off the kids, but no one sees the other side of you, the one that comes out behind closed doors. At home, you are a completely different person. You yell, you explode, you scream at your kids, sometimes in their face. You tell them to shut up. You grab them too harshly. You throw things across the room. You smack them in anger, twist their ears, spank them in rage, and immediately after, you are hit with a tidal wave of shame. You cry alone in your room and you whisper, "God, what is wrong with me?" You feel scared and disgusted by your own reactions. You're terrified that someone might find out. You wonder if your kids would be better off without you. You feel unworthy, broken, and too far gone to be redeemed. You try to fix this on your own. You listen to podcasts, parenting books, download freebies, but nothing changes. You keep falling back into the same patterns, and it feels like you are stuck in a cycle that you can't break. You don't trust yourself anymore, and if you're honest, you are afraid of who you've become. But here's the truth, Mama. You are not beyond hope. You're not alone, and with God's help and the right support, you can change. I'm Elizabeth, a mom of 4 and an anger management coach for Christian moms. And inside my Calm Christian Mom coaching program, I guide women just like you through a powerful transformation. This isn't shallow behavior management. We go deep. We address your triggers, your stress, your mindset, your nervous system, and the spiritual root behind your patterns. We invite God into every layer and walk hand in hand towards healing. In just 12 weeks, you can become a completely different mom, unrecognizable. One who leads with patience, not panic. One whose children feel emotionally safe around her. One who cultivates peace. This summer, I'm offering a Calm Mama strategy session, a powerful 15-minute one-on-one coaching session designed to help you uncover the root of your anger and receive spiritual, emotional, and practical support. It's your chance to experience what coaching is like with me before diving deeper into ongoing support. If we both feel like the full program is the next right step, we can talk about what that looks like for you. You don't have to keep living like this. Your family is worth healing, and so are you. Use the link in the show notes to book the Calm Mama strategy session.
All right. Do you struggle with wanting to control your children, their emotions, and specifically their behavior? I know that that's definitely something. If anything that triggers my anger the most, it's feeling out of control in a situation and feeling like my children are not listening to me and feeling out of control. So in today's episode, I invited Jeanette, and she's a mom of 3, and we'll be chatting about how to release and surrender our children to Jesus and to God, because there are obviously situations where, yes, we're in charge, we're in control. As a parent, we still make the big decisions, but there comes a time where we need to truly surrender our children to Jesus and to God, and things are happening in their lives, at school, with friendships, things behind closed doors, like things that we cannot always control in the circumstances. And how do we release them and surrender them to Jesus and without stressing out of trying to control them? And I know that you're going to enjoy this conversation, because that was a really great, important message for me as well, because Jeanette, her children are older than mine. And so she's a few steps ahead of me. And so it's been really helpful to hear this from someone who's a little bit further ahead and giving some guidance and suggestions and tips. Also, she's a Christian and she's a believer. And so that's really awesome as well. All right, my friend, let's get into this conversation. Hi, Janet. I am so glad to have this conversation with you. Welcome to Emotionally Healthy Legacy Podcast.
Hi, I'm so excited to be sitting with you today. This is so much fun.
Yes, before we get it started, I want to ask you a question. What is something you've been loving lately?
I have been loving, let's see. Oh, so this sounds kind of silly, but I have been loving cooking gluten-free. Like, I know that sounds like kind of crazy, but I had noticed some inflammation that's been happening. And so for myself, I've like really tried to be gluten-free. And I love just trying something new and it being like successful. But then I also love that Sour Patch Kids are gluten-free. So that has been like such a treat because I can still have like a little bit of the candy that I want while I'm removing something that is probably not great for me.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I had to do gluten-free for a little bit with my youngest son. He was sensitive. He had some skin issues when he was like, I don't know, one or something. And I had to do dairy free and gluten-free, specifically for him. So that
Yeah.
was I found that to be an adjustment when you're used to cooking a certain way. So it was a little
Yeah.
bit challenging, but
If I
doable.
had to take the dairy out, it would be a very different situation. But taking just like one thing at a time has been manageable.
You're here to talk about how to stop controlling our children in everything they do. And before we jump into that, I want you to share a little bit with our listeners about who you are, what you do, where you from. Like, I know you have 3 kids. Share us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm Jeanette. I live in Central Texas. I'm originally from Alaska, which is really fun. And I've got my husband. We've been married for 18 years, I think. And we have 3 kiddos, like you mentioned. We have a 16-year-old, a 14-year-old, and a 12-year-old. Our 12-year-old Zoe is adopted and she's from Africa and she's deaf. So we are a American Sign Language using family. And we're just, that's kind of who we are. We're just kind of this like sarcastic group of people that in my hopes will grow up and be best friends one day. And I am a podcaster. I'm a writer, a speaker, and I just kind of get to do a little bit of everything on the internet, which I love. And I get to show up and be as authentic as possible. And then there will be times where I show up and say, okay, this last season was really hard. And let me tell you why now that we're kind of past it. But it's a joy to show up and encourage people and women on the internet.
Yeah, I love doing that too. And I really like what you said, like showing up authentically. That is actually one of my core values. So a while back I was reading a book about figuring out what are your core values, what
Mhm.
is really important to you in like relationships and stuff. And for me it was authenticity. I cannot do relationships when it's just superficial and
Yeah.
somebody just being fake. I cannot. I literally have to unfollow people. Like when I was on social media, I would unfollow people like that, people that would trigger me that I know that they're not being authentic. And so I really appreciate you being, doing that on social media and just even putting your light out there and being real and truthful, kind of like, and that doesn't mean that we need to like put all our personal details out there for everyone to know. But, you know, there's a difference between putting this image that everything is great and perfect
Yeah.
and sharing that I am struggling. I'm going through something hard right now and things are challenging and I feel discouraged. I feel like, I'm praying and God is not listening or whatever it might be. And I think that is so important to share because so many others relate to that. And
Mhm.
once you're past that season, you can encourage others.
Yeah.
So I invited you to come on the show to talk about the desire to control. Specifically, we're going to focus on our children,
Mhm.
right? So tell me, where do you think that stems from? That desire to want to be in control and get others to do what I want you to do, what I said for you to do.
I think for me, I think for all of us, it will kind of come from a different spot. For me, it comes from pride and from some childhood wounds. I'm a pastor's kid, and so we were told growing up that our actions reflected on my dad and his role in the church and in our community. And so that was a little bit of like, and it was a little bit of emotional manipulation, and I don't think that they might have understood that growing up. So now my desire to control my children stems from that of, I need you to do it this way because one, I asked you to, and two, if you do it a different way, I might look bad. And that's kind of where and that honestly is like that's like the seed of pride in my life. And that is just so awful. And so a lot of that is, kind of taking control of them so that I look better, which is so gross.
Yeah, but I totally get that. I grew up in a conservative Slavic Christian background, and that was the thing. It was your children's behavior are a reflection of you, of who you are as a parent. And my parents, that's what they were taught, really. And like, so every time when your child misbehaved in church, you go home and you spank them and you tell them, like, you have to listen because, like, what are people going to think? What are people going to think and say? And I even remember a while back. So my father-in-law, he was a candidate to be a pastor in church, but it's done differently in the Russian Slavic community. Like, you don't go to like a seminary or anything. It's like who they think is a spiritual elder in the church, they will put him as a candidate and people would, vote. But my father-in-law, some of his sons at that time were teenage sons, and we're in a rebellious stage as a teenagers, and we're making choices and decisions that looked really bad. Yeah. And I remember overhearing adult conversations of, extended family members saying that they shouldn't pick him as a pastor because if he cannot control his own children, how is he going to control the church or manage the church? Yeah. And so it's such a image, having this image of your kids behave this way because it's a reflection of you is so big in the community that I was raised in. So then when I became a parent, and I quickly realized that trying to control your children and all of their behavior all the time creates so much stress, triggers you so much as a parent, brings up a lot of even anger and rage. Like, that was like, oh, maybe the root of my rage is because I'm trying to control my children when it's not my job to control them. My job is to mentor them, guide them, encourage them, direct them. But God never tells us to control others. He says for us to have self-control. So what happens to relationships when we do try to control them? Like, what destructive patterns come up in our parenting, maybe? Because, maybe look back at your childhood, reflect a little bit on that, or maybe, your own experience with your own kids.
Yeah, I think when we look at like what controlling does is it removes, like, if I look at my childhood, being controlled in that way removed my identity of who I was. I wasn't really maybe given the opportunity to find out, like, who am I? It was more like, this is who you are. This is who you have to be. And so when I look at parenting now, I look at like, I don't want to control the child out of who they are. I want to, like you said, lead them, coach them, teach them who they are in Christ so that they can have a relationship with him first and foremost. And two, have a relationship with me that is a safe place for them to like come to me with their struggles or their sins or their joy and all of those things so that they can say like, okay, this is what's going on. What do I do? And instead of me saying, this is what I'm seeing in your life, you need to fix this and this is how you need to fix it. I want to nurture them over control them. And I think when we take out that nurture and only focus on the here's what you need to be doing, we just remove a part of who they are. And I don't know, I don't want to raise robots, and I don't want to raise little me's. I want them to be wholly and truly who God made them to be, so that when we launch these arrows out into the world, they know the voice of God. They know their calling, or not even know, but they're like, I think this is what I'm going to do. And I have to trust them in knowing they have a relationship with the Lord. They are listening to him, and they will go do what they need to do for him, instead of me saying, well, I didn't hear that from God for you. And really and truly, like, I won't hear that from, I will only hear I will only be able to focus on the fact that I have to trust my kids to know what God's calling them to do, instead, because like in my marriage, like if Jesse's like, hey, I think this is what God's calling us to, I can partner with him in that and be like, okay, yeah. And then the same way, I want to partner with my kids and be like, okay, you feel like God's calling you to this, let me like really sit on it and pray about it, how we can support you. Or be like, hey, like, I feel some red flags here. What do you think about this? Have you prayed about this? Instead of being like, yes, no, or absolutely one way or another. And so I just think that as we control, we remove relationship. And I think that as moms, I just don't think we want that. I think my goal, like I said earlier, my goal is that my kids will want to come home and not just come home because this is home, but come home because we have built a long-lasting friendship as we have raised them.
I love that. Like that your kids want to come home and see you and spend time with you. One of the things that my dad mentioned when like he was reflecting on his childhood, he said, I really struggled when I first got married because he lived with his parents for a long time, almost until he got married. And he said, like, a lot of decisions were made for him, like that was just the way the belief system was back then. Like, how I explained, like your parents made a lot of decisions for you. And, they were taught to be controlling. And he said, when I became on my own, I really struggled with just life decisions. Yeah. Like when I was married and like had to make decisions for my family, I constantly kept questioning myself. I constantly felt like I had to go back to my parents and ask them what they think, what I should do, because he was never taught how to, just even pray about it, ask God, what is the Lord says? And also like, well, think about it, reflect on it, like making your own decisions and like, what are the consequences of this and this and that? Yeah. And so that's like another thing, like, yes, we're raising these kids right now, they're young, like, but we also need to look down the road. Like, what is it going to lead to if we continue to do the same patterns right now? And I've noticed that when I try to control my kids, what happens? They resist. Yeah. They don't like being controlled. And that creates tension. And then that creates triggers and even anger outbursts.
Hey, friend, I want to pause this for a second. And I want you to think about something. Did you know that you are the biggest influence in your children's life? Yes, you, their mom. You are their biggest influence. And our children oftentimes don't do what we say, but they do what we do. So when you think about it, are you modeling to your children the way you want them to respond and handle anger, frustration, stress of life? Or are you coping in unhealthy ways? Are you lashing out in anger and saying things that you regret later? Friend, I want to let you know that this doesn't have to be this way. There's a better way to do motherhood. It is possible for you to truly be the mom you want to be for your kids. For you to look back at the end of the day and be proud of how you handle things with God's support, not just your own strength, but yes, your own influence that you did, but also with Jesus on your side. If you happen to be one of those people that have bought passive courses and never completed them, if you have listened to podcasts and read books and you feel like you've tried all the things, but nothing actually worked and you haven't seen the transformation in your life that you want to, I have an answer for you. The reason is that you most likely did not implement what you learned. And if you did it for a short period of time and you did not stick with it. And when we don't stick with it, we don't see the transformation and we don't see change. Oftentimes we need that support and accountability. Just about everybody needs that support and accountability in order to see the transformation. And I want to invite you into my coaching container. If you're listening to this and this resonates with you and you struggle with out of control anger, you're saying and doing things that you regret later, your relationship with your kids is tensed, your husband is saying, I want my loving wife back. Who are you, this new person that screams and yells all the time? If this is you, my friend, I want to let you know there's hope for you. In the show notes, there's a link to book a clarity call with me. Get on a call with me. Let's see if my coaching program is the answer that you've been praying for. Think about it. Pray about it. Reach out to me. I'm here for you. I would love to be your accountability partner and your coach that comes alongside you, that helps you transform your motherhood. If this is pulling at you, book a call with me. The link is in the show notes.
You've been studying this topic. What does the Bible tell us about controlling others?
Well, I love what you said before that like nowhere does, I mean, maybe not nowhere, but the Bible says like self-control is a fruit of the spirit. Like we're to have control of ourselves. And I think that is probably where I sit the most, where I have to have self-control as a mom to look at my child and say, you need self-control here. Here are your options. What can we do? The Bible tells us to obey our mom and dad. Okay, so how like leading them and teaching them in this of like, here are your options. Like you can run around like a crazy person. You can obey and put your shoes on like I've asked you to do, or you can sit here for a minute and pout. Like these are your options, like disobedience, obedience, and self-control, like really and truly. And so teaching our kids self-control, I think is almost, I would say right even with obedience, right? Like we want them to obey, but we don't want them to obey because we are, especially as your kids get bigger too. It's a different, like I'm in a different stage where I'm like, let's weigh our options. Let's talk about all these things. When they were little, it was slapping their hands. Don't touch that. It's hot. Now it's okay. Tell me why you think this is best. Here's where like obedience lies. Here's where self-control is, like kind of in the same hand. And then what are the consequences if we don't follow this rule? And so I think that teaching them self-control is almost as important as teaching them obedience, because sometimes obedience is because I said so, because I want you to do this. Whereas self-control is, I need you to not run through the grocery store like a maniac, because it's not safe. And two, I need you to control your body. Like you need to learn control here. And so I think that it all kind of goes hand in hand. I think that when we look at a whole of the fruit of the spirit, self-control is a big one. Love is a big one. Joy is a big one. I mean, they're all the same size, but like when we look at all of that together, and we look at our lives bearing fruit, and obedience is a part of that, I think that it all gets wrapped up in a really beautiful bow. And so I probably should do some more research on it, to be totally honest. But when I think about control, I don't hear the Lord telling me like control your children. I hear the Lord telling me like control yourself, like control your tongue, control your motives, control your body, control what you're putting in, control yourself. Not, the Lord has never been like, you better control that kid or he's going to get out of line. It's been like, control your heart, because how you parent in this moment matters more than what you're going to realize.
Yeah, yeah. And it makes me think of like how we can do even all the right things as a parent, and our kids will still make choices and decisions that we disagree with. Just even like God was he is the perfect father, and Adam and Eve still disobeyed. Why?
That's right.
Because there's a real enemy that is attacking your family, especially if you are believers. Like if the devil leaves you alone, that means you're doing what
Yeah.
he wants. If
Yeah.
he's attacking you, that means you're doing something right in the sense of like you're trying to follow the Lord, you're teaching your children the right things. And like
Yeah.
especially if you are in ministry and you're trying to serve God, like the devil's even more like trying to attack your family. He doesn't want you to succeed. He wants to do
Yeah.
everything to make you fall and make your family, your kids look bad. And especially if you have that mindset that my kid's behavior is a reflection of who I
Hmm.
am as a parent, that's going to be even harder for you
Yeah.
to keep going, you know? So I wonder, how do we surrender our children and their choices to God? Is this like a one-time thing or a daily surrender? Because, like, I know in other aspects in my life, when it comes to surrendering to God with like my own life decisions, it's like one day I make that decision and then the next day I have to resurrender. Like, it's so like, because the next day it's like my body, my flesh wants to take over and try to control something that is in God's control.
I wish it was a one-time surrender, right? Wouldn't that be so easy and nice just to be like, okay, God, this baby is born to me and I'm nursing them in the hospital and I surrender their life and their choices to you. Amen.
And
The
then,
end.
yes,
And we
let
have
go
like,
of the control.
yeah, blissful parenting, right? Instead, man, I feel like I have surrendered my kids to the Lord every single day. And there's days when I haven't, and I have gripped so tight to like my will for their life, that I have white knuckled parenting. And that's probably been more destructive than parenting through anger. As my kids get bigger and they're making bigger choices, or they're stumbling blindly even into sin, I have to surrender that I am mom, I am not God. I can't convict them. I can't force my convictions onto them. Instead, I just have to love them as Jesus loves them and hold them to a high standard, but at the same time say like, I mean, just yesterday I looked at one of my kids and was like, I said, you know that this is wrong. I'm very disappointed in the choices that you've made. Here's your consequence. And then as they were kind of breaking down crying, I said, just because I'm disappointed in you doesn't mean I love you any less. Your consequence has been handed out. We can move on. Like, so that's like the best I can do is love them as Jesus loves them. And Jesus never dangles that like seed of guilt over me. He doesn't say like, remember when you did this? He never dangles my sin over me. And that's actually one thing another one of our kids told us was like, when you say these things to me that are sarcastic about the sin in my life or about my past consequences, it feels like you're just lording over me in a way that is not productive. And oh my gosh, was that like, I immediately got defensive and was like, no. And then I was like, you know what? You're right. Jesus doesn't love me that way. Jesus doesn't say like, I forgive you. I love you. But remember how you did this and how it wasn't great? And it's like, no, it's totally different. And so I think that I have to surrender my will and my heart for my children every single day, because if I don't, then I turn into a controlling monster who wants to vindicate my feelings in a really unkind way.
Yeah. And I think that is a mindset thing that the enemy really tries to seep into us, is like even thoughts that we need to control our kids. And what happens if we don't? Like, and then it leads to destructive patterns and unkind words. And like I was just talking to somebody else right before you, and we were interviewing, and like enemy uses our mind. That is
Mm-hmm.
his weapon, because our mind, our thoughts affect our feelings, and our feelings affect our actions. And that's his weapon, is our mindset, our perspective. And like, that's why we need to keep coming back to the word. Well, what does the Bible say about this? The Bible doesn't say that we need to control our children and all their actions. It says you need to train them and guide them and mentor them and coach them and direct them.
Yep.
Yet they're still their own individuals. Because I know if my husband tried to control everything I was doing, I would get resentful. I would get bitter. I would try to fight back, versus him like, hey, what's going on? Like, I see that you're reacting this way. I see you're making these choices. Like what's going on? Is there anything I can do to help you walk through this, and like pray over you, support you? What do you need? And so I'm thinking of like a mama that's listening to this episode, and she is like, okay, this is really speaking to me. I notice that I'm often threatening, manipulating, trying to control my kids with anger, yelling, or maybe even cold treatments because you didn't do what I wanted you to do. Now I'm just going to withdraw from you because I'm so mad at you. Where should she start?
I think it kind of starts like you and I said at the beginning, kind of getting to like the root of why you want to control. Like, is it pride? Is it fear? Is it just the desire to be the boss? Like where is it coming from? And then once you get to that, it's a lot of the times mine also comes from like that lie of like what you're like, I look like a bad mom if you behave this way. Or what will people think? And so I think for me, it was kind of like looking around and seeing freedom for other people. Like one of my favorite things to do is like if a baby's crying on an airplane, I love just to even like in my own mind, give that mom grace. Like nobody cares. Like it is fine. And if I have the opportunity to look at her and be like, 90% of these people on this plane have children. We have all been there. You don't need to worry about it. And same at like Target, if I hear a child crying, it's kind of like that Hunger Games salute. Like we've all been there, like do 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 do. Like we see you, hear you, or for you, and just kind of encourage that mom. And so I think if we are willing to encourage that mom in that, we have to turn that voice around and face it to ourselves. Like, okay, nobody actually cares that my kid is running rampant at the store. How can I teach them and train them in this moment? Like, hold on to the cart or stay by me. How can I do that? I always told my kids, get skinny. And so like they would like line up on the cart and like get skinny. And so they'd each have a hand on the cart so that we could like kind of maneuver. I think that the first things is just kind of like identifying our own sin and identifying our own purpose behind the control. And then like extending freedom to our kids of like, here are your choices. And we do this all the time with our big kids now. I mean, it's a habit that has lasted of like, you have a choice. You can disobey, you can obey, or you can offer me another suggestion. Like if you have something else to say, like go for it. Tell me, what do you think is better here? Because then it gives them a little bit of say in the matter. As our kids have gotten bigger, it's like, oh man, I just don't know how to punish this. Like, what do you think? Like, this is the first we've ever dealt with this. What do you think we should do? Or just giving them some ownership. And in all of this is actually really freeing for you and for them. I have one kid who loves music, and he said, like, oh, I would hate it if you took explicit music away off my playlist, like off my Spotify account. And it was like, the next time you get in trouble, that's exactly what I'm doing. And he was like, and it's just like, you're allowing them to help you parent. And I think that when we kind of get off that pedestal that like, I'm the mom, so I know best. Well, guess what? I'm the mom and I am just like throwing spaghetti noodles at a wall sometimes. I don't know what's best all the time. And I'm trusting God to like help me, but also like I'm just trusting these kids to like help me. It's kind of like the blind leading the blind, but at the same time, I've laid down my pride to say like, I don't know what I'm doing here. I'm just doing the best I can. And I'm doing it prayerfully, and I'm doing it fully surrendered to God that he gave me these kids in this season for a purpose. and we're just going to do the best that we can with what we have. And so all of that to say, surrender your sin and figure out like what it is, and then offer up some choices. Lay down your pride in front of your kids. Man, when I started apologizing to my children, it changed our relationship. To say like, I'm sorry that I parented that wrongly. Like I was wrong. I'm sorry that I acted in anger. I'm sorry that I acted out of fear and control. Like, we were just talking about that with our biggest, like this was out of control, or this was out of my own like sin. It's been really freeing to talk about. And then that opens up further conversation of like, man, I see this sin in my life. Like, do you see anything like this in your life? Or have you seen this pop up in other ways in my life? How can I fix it? And as we parent that way, our kids are realizing that we are just humans like them, and we are learning and growing the same as them. And we might be like, a step ahead, but man, that rug gets pulled out of us quick sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I agree with that. And I've done that with my kids too, especially with my older one. I would I'm like, okay, what you did was wrong. And you know that. What do you think your consequence should be?
Yeah.
And it needs to be something that will help you remember to do differently next time. I saw this funny meme. My husband sent me, like, when you try to parent your middle child and your older one starts suggesting consequences. I'm like, oh my goodness. So true. My kid's
So
totally
true.
done that. It's like, okay, I'm not inviting you into this conversation. This is between me and your brother.
Yeah.
We'll figure this out.
Yep. We have that. We had that just last night, even. He's like, if I would have done that, blah, 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 blah. And it was like, okay, well, remember that you're very different people and that we parent you very differently, even as siblings. So it's just so funny. Yeah. Well, you should try this to them. It's like, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so funny. Okay, so what is like one thing you want the mama that is listening to this podcast? What do you want her to walk away with?
I just want you to walk away with hope. You cannot mess up your children. Like, you can, but it takes a lot of work to mess them up. And if you are listening to podcasts like this and you are listening and growing and doing your best, you're doing a good job. And so I think that there's hope in the sense of like, I think that we think we're messing up more than we are. And I think that's a lie. I think that's one, it's almost like a lie of like pride. Like I can be so bad that I'll mess up my children. Or it's a lie that is like, I can mess up my children so bad that God can't save them. Like, what? No, like God loves our children just as much as we do. And if we are pursuing the Lord and we are pursuing emotionally healthy legacies and we are pursuing and doing the work on ourselves, man, we're doing a good job. And I think that there's so much hope in like that pat on the shoulder that we should give ourselves, like we're doing a lot and we're doing a good job. And even on the days where you feel like you did a bad job, like take a look, like your kid hugged you and kissed you goodnight, or you hugged and kissed them goodnight, or you said you're sorry, or they said they're sorry, or all of those things, like they still reached out for you. And I think that to me has always given me more hope than I could even remember in the bad days where that like, give yourself grace. Like would get so mad. Like, I don't deserve grace. I'm a bad mom. And then I would look in the mirror and be like, I'm not a bad mom. I had a bad moment, but I also apologized. And I also fed my children and they also reached out to me and I also loved them. And I just think that like, there's so much grace and hope in remembering that we cannot mess up God's plan. And especially if we are doing the work of like really processing our own sin and pursuing healthy lives with and for our children.
That is well said. I really like how you finished that. And I want to circle back to that. You said that when you said I'm a bad mom, but no, I just had a bad moment. And I say that often to my listeners. You're a good mom who had a hard time or you had a hard day, you made a mistake and we all make mistakes and you can repair. And move forward and learn from that and see what you can do differently. I think the struggle is like when we do know we mess up and we don't do anything about it.
Yeah.
That is when I think maybe, like you said, like where you can screw up your kids is when you don't try to do anything differently. Yeah. But when you recognize, if you're listening to the show, you are a mom who wants to make some positive changes, and you're listening to this because you want to become a better version of yourself, a better mom for your kiddos. And so I want to encourage you that you're an amazing mom and you're doing your best and little steps in the right direction.
That's right. That's right. It's so good. And just recognizing day in and day out, we get chances every single day. And every single day, every hour. Like if you're like, I surrendered, but then I picked it back up, and it's like, set it back down. I think it was Beth Moore that said one time, like, I surrender every day. And sometimes I surrender every hour. And sometimes I surrender every 30 minutes. And sometimes I surrender every 5 minutes. And sometimes I surrender every minute, just depending on how often I decide to pick it back up.
I like that. That's a great reminder that it's not just like a one-time thing.
Yeah.
It's a decision that you have to keep coming back to and asking even God for help. I think it's really hard to surrender without asking him for help and trying to do it on your own strength. And
that's right.
That's something that I pray on a regular basis. Like, God, help me just to release to you what is in your control, that, even take that weight off yourself trying to control what's out of your control. That's right. So I love this conversation. This was so good. And I know it's been so helpful to the mamas that are listening. So where can our listeners connect with you?
Well, if your listeners are on Instagram, I know you're not, but if they are on Instagram, they can hang out with me at Jeanette Tapley. We talk a lot about parenting teens and parenting in general, finding joy and just like community. If you need anything else from me, JeanetteTapley.com is a really great spot. And if you need to reach me for anything, like if you had any thoughts or just wanted to get in touch with me, you can email hello@JeanetteTapley.com, and that will go to me and my team, and we will serve you the best way possible. And we have a freebie for your listeners, Elizabeth. We want to give away a 5-day devotional. And I'm pretty sure our day about control is in that devotional, where we talk about surrender and control and how I had to lay down some stuff just with parenting. And that is, I will give you the link for that because I actually don't know the link. I told you that before. I forgot. But it's a 5-day devotional from my book, It's Time for Jesus, that just kind of guides us through surrendering the thought of who we need to be, where God actually just loves us exactly who and where we are.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for being here. It was such an honor to have you.
It was such a joy. Thank you for having me.
My friend, I hope you enjoyed listening to this podcast interview with Jeanette. And I had such a great time connecting with her and chatting with her. If you found this podcast episode helpful, would you do me a favor and share this with a friend, someone who you know is going to need to hear this message. Thank you so much for being here. Until next time.
Hey mama, do you find yourself snapping over the smallest things, like spilled milk or constant whining, then feeling horrible afterwards? If you're tired of losing your temper and you want to show up with more patience, I have something for you. It's a free training called How to Be More Patient with Your Kids so you're not screaming over spilled milk. Inside, I'll walk you through 10 simple things you can start doing today to become a calmer, more Christ-like mom, even on the hard days. To get it for free, just leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts and send a screenshot to hello@emotionallyhealthylegacy.com. Or if you'd rather skip the wait, you can grab it right now for just $27. The link is in the show notes. Let's help you become the peaceful, patient mom your kids need.